All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We are joined once again, as always, by legendary strength coach Dan John, according to many reputable outlets. And we got another guest here. It's actually been a while since Alex has joined us, but good to see you, Alex. Glad to have you here. And Dan, good morning to you. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning, and thank you. I'm in beautiful Pinehurst, North Carolina, and I am saying hello to my friend. In fact, Alex, we had breakfast not long ago.
Yeah, it was would have been sometime last year. It was a great breakfast, as I recall.
Great.
I remember
Great breakfast.
In a previous I don't know, we've talked about like top 10 meals, Dan. I know that's been like that's in the top 10 for me.
Wow.
I would say, yeah, maybe
It must have been one heck of an omelet, Alex. Yeah,
it was very good. The conversation was really put it over the top.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So I was on I-80, and I said pick a place just off I-80, and then
George Webb, IHOP. What'd you go for?
It was a local place in Omaha called Bailey's, and
really good.
I'd never been there before. It's so good.
Really good. Yeah.
Couldn't even spring for Denny's. All right. Good. Well, all right. Well, as always, we'll do our live Q&A. So, gentle listeners, put your comments and stuff in there. Today, Dan, we talked about this a little bit last week. I want to revisit it. I think it's time to talk about it. Alex, you were reminding me of a wise saying that Dan said like 10 years ago from a workshop. So Dan, wow, this goes to show how impactful your workshops are. Alex remembers things you said verbatim from them. But there's a bit of a scandal going on right now in the, quote, unquote, evidence-based, science-based fitness space. If you know, you know. And I thought that this could prompt a fruitful discussion. I guess the short story, trying to be as accurate and as fair as I can, is that somebody who's very well known in the industry here, and again, if you know, you know, apparently didn't produce the best doctoral work that the world has ever seen. It's come under exceedingly heavy criticism, and I guess this was seen as a problem because this person kind of parades under the banner of science and stuff like that. And I think that's a general issue that I want to discuss with you too, is people who use science as a sort of brand versus those who actually use it as a guiding principle. I think there's actually a difference between those two things. So put a pin in that. And so that, that caused a bit of a stir on its own, and fine, whatever. There's been bad, there's been bad, doctoral research before. That would have been the end of the world. But then it seemed as if there was something of a cover-up operation where the individual tried to say that this was just a rough draft, and I don't know, maybe tried to do some quick edits and upload a different one, and then turned out that no, the original thing was the final draft, and it turned into this whole big mess. And so there's there's definitely a moral to that story. I guess if you're kind of up, Schitt's Creek, don't throw away the paddle or something like that. So I wanted to have a good discussion here with you guys, get your thoughts about any of this in general, and then talk about what maybe the appropriate sort of attitude towards training is with respect to personal experience, what the scientific, research or literature is, and how to be how to be evidence-based in a principled way without being like oddly the sort of perverse of it, So Dan, let's get your thoughts first, because I know you've got some things to say about this. So I'd like to start with you, and then we'll go to Alex on all that.
Yeah. For me, it's a mishmash of responses. So just let me just
take your time.
It out, speak out. First off, the field that of what I do is relatively young. Okay. And the sad thing is, it's the big questions have already been answered. If you get Tom DeLorme's book, Progressive Resistance Exercise, where he worked with polio patients in World War II, injured veterans, he gives us the foundations of progressive resistance exercise, and you can't do any better than what he said. Right after that, the book Physiology of Strength came out by Heitinger, and the English translation is 1961. And I have a copy. So the research comes from the 40s and 50s, and the information is rock solid, it's, it is true anabolics and amphetamines change the game, but I mean, it'd be hard to study anything. And if something new comes along, the rules change a little bit, but all you need to do is, spend a couple of weeks with me, and it's a rare day I don't say, oh my God, I can't believe this person died or that person died because of the drugs. Okay. So not a lot of stones can be unturned, newly turned in this field. It's just, the information is there. We can add new tools with technology and all the rest, and better machines. And I yet to see one. But part two, for so long, and don't forget, I was told the following many times when I first started lifting, and if I offend anybody, I'm sorry. Weightlifting will make me muscle bound and turn me into a homosexual. Muscle bound. So the start of weightlifting, don't forget, and it's not until Jane Fonda and Arnold, that late 70s, early 80s, that this turns at all. And I mean that. So we're looking at, since I've gotten my bachelor's degree, that this field has finally gotten, okay, we can study it. So you're looking at a relatively new field with all the questions already answered, okay, so to speak, okay. And now we're chasing, we're chasing herbs and spices on top of the turkey, mashed potatoes, 12 different vegetables, okay. Now we're going, is rosemary better than thyme? I mean, that's really what we're at. Then what happened is that the great strength coaches of history, I think, don't have degrees. They have time in the chair. And I think that is, if you want to know how to get a car to go fast, you don't go to an engineering wing of a university. You go to some, back alley somewhere where guys who are, motorheads love it. This field is more like fast cars than it is rocket science, I guess. Now, you definitely want the graduate degrees if you're going to go to the moon or Mars. But if you just want a car to go fast around a track, you get a bunch of guys who are, are kind of greasy and make a lot of noise when they test their engines. On this particular controversy, I would say the biggest mistake was, and I actually put him in a group with you both of you, is when you mess with Lyle McDonald, you better make sure I like Lyle a lot. I think of Lyle as I think of you too. I really like both.
That's nice. I've had no interactions with Lyle. I know him, of course, and his reputation, but yeah.
He's trained with me many times. We've had many a delicious meal, Alex, together. But I tell you this, one thing about Lyle is his search for the truth. I just said truth. Mm-hmm. The truth is unbending. And my thought is I've listened to a lot of this stuff. I've listened to some of the stuff that goes back. I think in this particular field, you got to be very careful about saying that you're the smartest person in the room, because just like in the fast car people, a lot of those people are geniuses. They just dropped out of high school because they found what they loved. So, I mean, to me, I would listen to Louis Simmons far sooner. And even if I don't agree with Louis on everything, but I'll read and listen to everything he wrote and said, because, and I don't know if he had a doctorate or not. I don't know what he had academically, but he gets me thinking. Abajayev, the great Bulgarian strength coach, I don't know if he had a degree, but boy, he turned Olympic lifting on its nose. So there's my point. Be very careful of ever thinking that evidence-based is better than experience-based just because we went to class. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alex, just get some of your thoughts, and then I'll chime in. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think Dan nailed it really, because especially talking about Delorme and having figured out a lot of this stuff a very long time ago, and then adding on to the fact that we're dealing with a field that, as Dan noted, is relatively young. And I would also add, Pat and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, is not rocket science. There's a funny quote from an article that I read about Vasily Alexeyev, who was the first the first person ever to military press 520 pounds, or like
500, yeah.
236. Yeah. And he used to play I mean, first of all, he trained like a wacko. You know, he would do high rep stuff. He would lift his barbells from the bottom of an ice cold river. He just did all sorts of things that his own experience showed worked better toward getting him the results that he was after. And sometimes he would train in the middle of the night. Sometimes he would train a couple days in a row. Sometimes he would take days off. So there wasn't any super precise thing. It was like he realized that for what his goals were, he had to kind of make his own path. And I think I don't know if the science-based or the evidence-based training is more popular, because nowadays people seem to like be looking for permission to do stuff. Like they want to know that what they're doing is not wasting their time, as opposed to testing it, seeing how it works, and then garnering the lessons that they can get from it. And so they appeal to, let's say the priests of the science world, or they're self-appointed. These are not people who are bad or ignorant or anything like that. But it's just like a new trend in people who are desperately looking for answers and guidance, and are afraid to pick up the machete and kind of chop their own way through the jungle to find their own path.
Exactly.
Yeah, good. So, few thoughts. I think that's a good lesson. All right, so don't mess with Lyle McDonald. That's we'll all have to take that very. He does seem to have quite a passion, and that's good. That's good to be unbending for truth. That is like, if you're gonna have a passion about anything, you should do that. Maybe don't parade yourself around as a genius and be like exceedingly myopic in your critiques of other things under the banner of science, especially if there isn't like a settled science around these things. This is my issue, of course, was that this individual, which everybody knows is Mike Israetel, right, would be very quick to, like critique kettlebell swings, but under like a very like obscure lens of bodybuilding, as if that's applicable to like everybody. And then of course it would be paraded under this, well, I've got a PhD, right? As if this is like some sort of established scientific consensus, which it definitely is not, right? And then if like that's built upon an exceedingly shaky foundation, which was whatever his dissertation work was, not great. So and there's another point here I think it's important for people to understand about. I mean, I don't know where the line is, and this is hard to say, like, of when somebody becomes a scientist, right? But it's true. It is true. And this has been said in these conversations that a lot of kind of graduate work, and I think this is true in this case, that doesn't make you a scientist, right? Like the PhD work in a lot of universities in America, like it's sort of preparing you to do research and go into the field as a scientist, right? That's not the case everywhere. I was telling Dan last time, I'm doing PhD right now in philosophy, not science, but mine's with the EU, and their standards are a little bit different. I have to actually have peer-reviewed publications to even defend my dissertation. So it's less about preparing you to be a researcher and you already like having to prove that you already are one, right? And I kind of like that. And like, does that even if you've done that, do you cross the line, or is it when you're I just think people are a little quick, even those with certain credentials, to just be calling themselves a scientist, right? And this is what leads me to the concern about science as a sort of brand that's out there. And Alex, this is what you're talking about, because it's true. Like people look up to scientists, real scientists, and hey, rightfully so. They contribute a lot of great things to society. And I think there's a lot of quick and cheap, borrowed sort of false credibility that people, especially online, not just this one guy we're talking about, but all sorts of people who take science as a brand rather than a guiding principle. And when you take it as a guiding principle, there should be certain qualities on display that I find are especially lacking in a lot of these people. Number one being epistemic humility, right? It's like the absolute utter lack of a properly scientific attitude among this and many other people seems to me a strong indicator that what this person is parading themselves around might not actually be the case. And this is not to say that all or even most or even much of what this person said was garbage. I actually don't think that's the case. I never followed him very closely, but most of what I saw was, hey, this is decent, right? This is decent decent lifting information, disagree with a few things here or there, especially those like, myopic attacks on things, but like, for the most part, pretty basic, but also like the stuff that you definitely do not need, right? A PhD in to be able to say like, yeah, this is good stuff that the people should be doing. So I don't know if there's like one main point here aside from don't mess with Lyle McDonald here, but hopefully there's enough in there that people should find interesting or as takeaways. I don't know, Dan and Alex, any final thoughts on this whole fiasco before we take some questions here from people? Yeah.
But we do. I guess the problem is those of us who've been doing this a while do the scientific method. I know a lot of people, I think the kids say throw shade on this guy, Greg O'Gallagher, but what he has done since his youth is that he has tried something, he keeps what works, he walks away. Little Danny John, I did what worked, I threw away stuff that didn't, then I came back and do the stuff I threw away and did it again, found it worked this time. But most of us who've been in the field who've been doing these self-experiments have been using the scientific method. I know there's a lot of people, and I hope none of our listeners do this, but a lot of people know the guy who goes to the gym 3 days a week and you can never tell he even worked out, right? Over near my house, there's a famous person who trains 3 days a week on his cell phone, does this the whole time while doing machines. He makes no progress, but 3 days a week he's in the gym with his cell phone doing leg extension, leg curl for half an hour, bicep curl. He gets 3 sets in and he makes no progress. Okay. Outside of those, most of us, I can guarantee Patrick and Alex, if the two of you wrote down, okay, here are the 3 or 4 things, 5 things that work for me over and over and over. And I tell you, I keep coming back to these truths. Could you both say that?
I could, Dan.
Yeah, you could both say that. And then someone's going to raise your hand and say, well, what's the science behind it? And my first reaction is, shit, man. I mean, jeepers, man. I've been doing this for 60 years. 60 years. And I got to tell you, after 60 years of doing this, these little pulses keep coming true. I don't need to say that, that Pat Flynn is an idiot. He doesn't know nothing because, he doesn't have a doctorate. No, I don't think that's the way we do things. You can talk to a farmer without a degree, and he'll be able to explain crop rotation really well. And the biology student, the forestry student, can come in and explain it from a different angle. But both are still right.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just the angle. It's the lens.
Yeah, that's a good point. Somebody posted on Facebook yesterday, a little cliche, but I thought it was a helpful one. They said, I am science-based, not science-bound. And to me, that's a good little slogan, right? Because it's indicating that science is a helpful guide, but it's not exhaustive and it's not infallible, right?
But you want science to be infallible. You want the mistakes in science because that's where the learning comes.
Yeah, for sure. And certainly we do not need a peer-reviewed article for everything to know any. Like there's no peer-reviewed article on what my name is, but I'm pretty sure my name is Pat Flynn, right? So there's all sorts of, and the idea of being science-based would be something like, or evidence-based is, your personal experience is evidence. Yeah. Of course it's evidence. The question is, like, how much evidence is it, and how do you weigh it in the wider scheme of things against? And so somebody who's evidence-based shouldn't just be looking at the peer-reviewed literature. Of course, you should be in the field looking at the experience that others have, including yourself, and then also looking at what the literature is, and then trying to form a solid foundation from all of that. That to me is what the right attitude is. So you're not ignoring the literature, you're taking it seriously, but you're also kind of like understanding that any one study doesn't say a whole lot, right? You have to look at the kind of general consensus of things. And that's always everybody's favorite thing online, is just pick out one thing here or there that helps to, strengthen their narrative or sell their product, right? But you look at the general consensus, and the general consensus usually, at least in strength and conditioning, kind of supports traditional perennial truths that we all sort of knew all along. Like it has never been the case that like we thought all along that if you lifted heavy things with enough intensity volume, you got stronger. And then suddenly the scientific consensus is that's all wrong. No, what the hell? Of course not. Right. No, it's about the herbs. It's like, well, how much volume, like, should you train right to fail? Is it worth going beyond, like, little tiny details that for like really high performance specialized athletes might make a difference, but for most people, most of the time are not super important as long as you understand and implement those basic common sense truths. And then the other part of the science is kind of what you said, Dan, is like you can know from a lot of experience, good reflective experience, what works, even if you don't know why it works. And then the scientists can go figure out, well, here are the mechanisms and stuff like that. But you don't always have to know the mechanisms just to know, like, oh, you lift this thing and then this thing grows stronger, right? I do this, I get that. It works. Why does it work? I have no idea. And those are separate questions, but of course they're reinforcing questions, but you don't always have, and there's a lot, even among the scientists, where it seems like, okay, it seems like this works, but the mechanisms are still unclear. We're not entirely sure why it works. Good questions, should keep searching them out. But we don't have all those answers, but that doesn't undermine our confidence that we know that certain things work. Sorry to interject, Alex. Supposed to let you have a final thought on this, so you go ahead.
Yeah, you know, actually, I was going to reference what Dan said at the reasonableness seminar, which again, I go back, talk about, top 10 meals. In terms of like top 10 seminars, I do have to say, I think that's number one that I've ever been to, because there were so many insights from it that I thought it was like, eternal training truths that you forget about the details, like the background is what they're all laid down upon. And one of the things that I remember like reviewing my notes on it, you said this toward the end, was that about 80% of the material that you apply, or 80% of what you do in your training, should be based on what we have found for decades of worth of experience just works. 10% should be based around, let's say, new scientific research that maybe shines some light on stuff that we didn't quite know or that we previously weren't aware of. And then the last 10% is what you yourself are going to contribute to that pool of knowledge that we can glean from. And I think not only is that a lot simpler, but it takes the insanity out of trying to sift through God only knows how many scientific papers and trying to glean some truth out of that, when we've got decades and in some cases centuries worth of experience that give us the insights that we need to take the first step, which is really the most important part.
Yes. Yeah. Here, I want to highlight this from Anthony. He brings up a good point. He says, the problem with the experience of oneself is that sometimes you can think that X works, but in reality, Y works, and you didn't even notice the Y factor. Yes, this is true. This is why, while your experience is a source of possibly credible evidence, it's defeasible and needs to be weighed against the experience of others and what the scientific community is saying. That's why it's a both and, not either or, as we always like to say. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, you see this all the time with people who engage in a particular diet, say it's paleo or whatever, and then they will think that this is the thing. This is the magic secret that got me the results. And it's undeniable that they got results, right? So something worked. But they'll say it was, cutting out beans or whatever, right? But then this is when we know, well, let's look at the wider body of evidence, the experience of others and the research, and we find that, okay, you did get results from this, but as it turns out, people get similar results when you say control for calories and push protein up, right? So it's not that their experience was worthless. It did show something, but their interpretation of what was doing the real sort of work there might not have been the most accurate. And that's part of the learning process. So when it comes to your own experience, the thing is, you can't ignore your own experience, right? The thing is, you just have to be careful with the lessons you gather from it and how you interpret it. And that's why you go and you talk to people like Dan John and people with other experience in the field, because you might not have even needed to look at the body of research for somebody to just tell you, oh, well, all diets work if you control for calories or something like that, right? The experience of others and the wider pool of research. But of course, there's many other instances where people do infer the right sorts of things just from their personal experience. You just have to be careful and you just have to be modest. That's the right attitude. Dan, your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, so I've often said that 80% of what I do is true and will always be true. I'm just not sure what that is. So I'm constantly pulling in the other 20. But you made a good point just a reminder about something we learned in one of my classes. We come to a village and I'm thirsty and I say I need to go to the well. And that guy from the village says, "Oh, it's right over there." So I walk over there and I look down the well and I see water. Alex looks over and he sees a rock. Patrick looks down and goes, "Did you see the frog that's on the rock?" Okay. Which one of us was true? Which one of us was correct? The villager who said the well's over there? Me, who saw the bottom of the water? The stone? The frog? No. That's the way we're supposed to learn things. We share each other's experiences, and each one of us was absolutely correct. And our experiences just kept adding to what we learned. And that's why, and I know I met you both through kettlebells. The heartbreak that I've had, that's a bit of an overstatement, but when the great divorce happened, we lost the opportunity for so many of us to sit down and say, okay, I've been doing this with the bench press, and then someone says, well, add this, and someone adds a frog, someone adds a rock, someone walks, and we learn those things. But when you take an axe and say, I'm always right and I'm the smartest guy in the room, you kind of stop that and you open yourself up for a very serious attack.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was something great lost when that great split happened. It was unfortunate. There was a unique collection of different minds and perspectives, all kind of centered around one common thing, and that was sort of fractured off, wasn't it? That's unfortunate. Yeah, big time. Good. All right. Well, why don't we take some questions now? I hope that people found this discussion helpful, and we're not trying to add to a dog piling here, but we've this has become a big enough issue that I thought it was worth addressing, and hopefully we were able to give some helpful thoughts and perspectives on it. All right, so let us go now up here to some questions. Good morning, everybody. Tom has a comment. He says, I eat healthy for breakfast, but struggle for good lunch ideas to take to the office. I end up having a sandwich followed by apple and yogurt and berries. Any ideas on how to upgrade the sandwich to something better? Well, I mean, a sandwich isn't the worst thing in the world, but maybe we got some ideas. Yeah. Is it Arby's, triple roast beef and cheddar, or what are we talking here? Yeah, I mean, look, my go-tos for lunch, and you can prep these in bulk, and by you, I mean it's my wife that always does this, as Alex will tell you. The one pot meals, the Chili's, the soups are great, and those big butt salads. Those are, so I already tell you right now, my wife is out today, but in the fridge there is a big salad with chicken in it that she prepped already. So the stuff you can prepare in advance and that is easily transportable and can be reheated easy. Those are my go-to. So chilies and salads, guys. Any other thoughts there?
I think you nailed it. I mean, if you don't like food prep, I think crock pot, where you just throw a bunch of stuff in there. You don't even have to be particularly precise. I mean, honestly, it's kind of like lifting weights. It's like, just do it,
It is, and then exactly.
Give it some time, and something good's gonna come out of it. So yeah, I'm all about the crock pot.
Yeah, it's not like baking, right?
No, exactly.
that was actually funny you said that, because a good stew, a good crock meal is, what do we have? And then and my whole thing is, my first question usually, what equipment do you have? Oh, I want to be an Olympic lifter. Do you have an Olympic bar? No. Well, then we need to think this through. One thing that helped me, gentle listener, is I turned my office always into, I would say, a minor kitchen. So and I don't know if you could do it, but in my coach's office, we actually had a full-size refrigerator. And so, I mean, I had things you could make salads with. I had things there was plenty of food always stored in my office, and that was really helpful for me. I kept dry goods in there. And of course, because it was a gym situation, you had to be wary of mice and rats and vermin. So, and actually the biggest vermin were the assistant coaches and the guests, who would just steal our food constantly, or whoever did. But, when you say that a sandwich is a bad thing, it is true. I mean, bread is, calorically, bread is a big hit, but don't think wraps are going to do you any better. So there is something magical about a sandwich or a burrito, which is why in the book, Barry Easterly's book, Just Eat, he comments at the end not to eat sandwiches because they're such a calorie bomb. So one of the things I'd like you to think about is maybe take a moment aside one night and just add up the calories. I would also say, and I know yogurt is the go-to health food, but I've always thought, and of course some people might not like it, but cottage cheese is much more satiating.
Yes, I agree. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, 100 calories of cottage cheese is a fairly good serving. If all you did was take a container of cottage cheese to work every day and said, I'm going to eat this container. Now, I don't know how many calories is in it. I'm sure it's probably not as much as I think. I wouldn't be surprised if it was only 600 calories, but you're not eating anything else.
Yeah.
So
now, I agree. I don't know if there's a peer-reviewed article to say you're allowed to do this, but cottage cheese with some cut up cantaloupe, I find is these for whatever reason the cantaloupe just it does well with the cottage cheese. Yeah. So and big fan of that. Yeah.
And again, and I know people who put protein powder in them, and it's like, I don't think you need to.
No, not that. Yeah.
The cottage cheese is a protein bomb.
Protein.
But again, single food meals like a bowl of cottage cheese is boring, but there are upsides to it because it gives you a chance to figure out satiation. So maybe one day, maybe one day you show up with you cook 2, 3, 4 sweet potatoes, and I'm going to have a sweet potato only lunch, and just get a sense of what fills you up, and then over time play with the foods that really are calorically lower, satiation high.
Yeah, the sweet potatoes are another good hack. So Christine always cooks just a bunch of those because the sweet potatoes take 4 days to cook and then they take 7 days to cool down.
Yeah.
You have to do that in advance, but once they're cooked, easy to reheat. You can mash them, you can microwave them. Yeah, those are definitely good. So some ideas there. Tom has a quick follow-up. He says he's been enjoying learning the guitar after the encouragement we gave him 6 weeks ago. So very cool, Tom. Let us know what you're working on and learning there. That's very cool. All right. Jason has a question. He says, update on his previous question about pressing the beast. I think this was last week. He found the video. He found the video, Dan, that you recommended.
I want to find videos, man.
Videos. He found the Didio, the Dan John video, and it's a great program. And he tried the touchdown press with a 28 kilogram bell, and it is brutal. Remind us what the touchdown press is.
Okay, so that's the one where the starting position is here, and then but the hardest thing is it's not a seesaw. It is a down, up, alternate the arm, down, up. So the non-working arm remains in that waiter walk position, a lockout, whatever. Whatever you call that. The bell is locked out, and it's the time under tension here that really adds to the system. And really, if you ever get yourself in a situation you don't have a lot of load, touchdown presses by themselves would be an outstanding workout.
Yeah, excellent. Good. All right, let me scroll back up here. I lost my spot. Apologies. Greetings from Croatia. Greetings from Atlanta. Hello from Beijing. Oh, we are internationally known, my friends.
Yes,
look at that.
Yes.
All over the world. Good stuff. All right, Christopher has a question here. Currently working with a freshman multi-sport athlete with the following program: foam rolling, dynamic stretching, sprint work, strength with power, speed, and anabolic stacking. What is your opinion, Dan?
I don't know what anabolic stacking
I don't know what anabolic stacking is either.
I could take a stab at it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think you need a freshman on anabolic stacking. I think with the younger athlete, the dynamic, the stretching, the flexibility work, the foam rolling, it's just time. I think it'd be a lot. I always did, of course, with the young athletes, our phrase was the warm up is the workout. That we would spend. That's we did all the loaded carries, the goblet squats, the push ups, the crawling. I would throw like original strength in there. I would throw just the warm up should be with a bell, a load of some kind. doing various movements, because the freshmen, and I don't care if it's a freshman in college or freshman in high school, they don't really need the foam rolling and stretching and stuff. But I don't want to go too deep in because I don't know. And I do love, I like the sprinting a lot. I think there's real quality, there's real value in that. But again, when you're working with a young athlete, everything works, and don't make it too complicated, and keep exposing. So this athlete should learn to be a kettlebell expert, an Olympic lifter, a power lifter, a gymnast, every other ist you can think of. And that's more important than whether it's 3 sets of 8 or 3 sets of 5.
Be a generalist, right? Yeah, that's good. Alex, any thoughts on this, or shall we move on?
Let's move on. I don't have any real experience training young athletes, so I don't have much that I could offer.
Okay. Christopher has a follow-up, and it's a great one. He says people would be much better off listening to strength coaches like y'all, Mike Boyle, and other coaches in the field for a long time with great track records.
Well, we're getting pushed out. The NC2A now says you have to have a certain certification to coach, and my thought was, why? Because the best strength coaches I know generally come up through the ranks. You think about Jim Wendler. Wasn't he a linebacker for Arizona? Played, most of the coaches I know that I respect generally they were athletes who learned to lift, they made mistakes, and now they share. So sadly, this field is and it'll be interesting because, and it's already happening, folks, is that the collegiate athletes are going off the campus and hiring a local trainer now. It's already happening.
Yeah. No. So let's talk about. We've talked about this before. I think it's really important. And this is something where I don't have a perfect answer, probably because there isn't one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people want more regulation, right? More certs. Why? Because they're worried about, I don't know, inexperience, but really, like con artists and grifters.
Yeah.
But as we're currently learning, a PhD does not prevent grift. It doesn't. Clearly not. Or charlatanism or tomfoolery or anything like that. It might be a filter, but it's not an absolute guarantee. Or competence or experience. And then just, one more quick point is I would say that I was very lucky personally as somebody who was paying their way through college to have the opportunity to start training people with very low barriers to entry, right? I wasn't completely unqualified. I did manage to save up for some basic education and certs. And of course I was studying and learning as much as I could on my own. And that allowed me to get traction in a field that if the barriers were way up here and I had to go through so much more cost and time, I would have been flushed out. I would have never have even gotten into it. And that to me, if you're going to lean in one direction or the other, I would rather not lean in that direction. I would rather provide more opportunities for people to, and yes, you put in as many safeguards as you can to prevent the charlatans and the grift. But so many, and Dan, I think you're in this case too, people were able to get into this field because the barriers were not enormous, provided opportunities for people genuinely, good, talented people who wanted to work hard to get in, get going, and provide real contributions. And maybe later they did get their PhD, or maybe not. Maybe they were just great coaches who would not have done that or been there if a lot of what people are pushing for now was in place. Sorry, Dan. Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I shouldn't have jumped in. But the second you said that, I think one of the finest strength coaches I've ever seen in real time is Chip Morton, who I think you guys might know, or at least you know him.
Yeah, definitely.
And Chip's down in University of South Carolina now. And I was watching him when he was with the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know what Chip's degrees are. I know that he studies everything he does. I mean, he is such a student, but let's just put that aside. But here's a guy who coaches the whole person. He literally, I've never seen anyone do a better job of coaching when his athletes are hurt and they're rehabbing. He knows that they're hurting emotionally, and he's part of the emotional component. He tells them it's going to be all right. He talks about he has this, he does like Dick Notmeyer. Here's a story of somebody who had the same thing. Well, Dick Notmeyer, my coach, he's not qualified to do anything according to and yet, I was with his junior world lifter last weekend and my whole story. I mean, all of us who train at the Pacifica Barbell Club, we went on to some, very serious success long term. Yeah.
And one other point, like before anyone thinks I'm some sort of radical libertarian, which I'm definitely not. Like, I don't think anybody should just be able to perform brain surgery, right? Like, I think in some areas the barriers need to be very, very high for some areas, right? But at the same time, all due respect to our great trainers and coaches out there, but it's not brain surgery. It just isn't. And that's why, like a lot of these, exercise scientists, like, I'm sorry, all the sciences are not equal. And I'm not saying that
can you come back in a little bit? Sorry.
Housekeeping.
We literally told them to wait this out.
I know.
It's okay. I'm not mad.
Oh, but yeah, the point being that even though there is certainly respectability to be had in the field, like all the sciences are not equal, right? Some areas should have extremely high barriers to entry to get into. Other areas, I think you should offer more opportunity for people and let the the cream of the crop, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're in philosophy, and I mean, it's I'll go to workshops now, and for some reason, I think it's your generation. Everyone decided to become a Stoic. It's just like
Stoicism is very hip right now. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so I'll be, with somebody with the, proudly, holding their 8th grade diploma, telling me about what Stoicism is all about. And the thing is, I'm okay with that. In the same way, I think it's okay for someone to have a strong belief in their religious tradition. Obviously the earth is flat, and because it says so in this book. But as you move up, you've got to be expected to do the harder and harder labor. So if I'm the world's greatest strength coach, and all I tell every client ever is we're going to do 1 set of exhaustion on the leg extension, 1 set to exhaustion on the leg curl, 2 days a week, because that's what I was taught in 1971. I haven't done the other work you're supposed to do, which is the evolution, the ongoing work. And then, this last weekend, I'm wearing the gear right here because it's one of my few clean shirts left. I did for the 4th time, I did Original Strength, the pro certification. And that's what I think you should do when you're in this field. When I go to workshops, you guys have seen me. I think I've been to a workshop. I listen to the other speakers. I take copious notes. I used to drive Larry Draper crazy because I like to sit in the front row because I don't like when people are talking in front of me, or I like to listen. I like to learn. And that's what is expected of me. It's ongoing education that I think is far more important than education.
Yeah, great point and certainly I'm not in any sense discouraging that. And I find that the people who are allowed the opportunities, the good ones, that's exactly what they do. All I'm saying is that if you're going to block people from entering into the field by making them go through many years and many thousands, tens maybe of thousands of dollars to attain a certain degree or certification that itself might not be particularly helpful, I think there's a cost there, and I think that cost is one that's not worth paying at the present moment.
Yeah, yep. And I think that's especially true if, number one, like coaching is not a super high-paying field. Even if you get into the really high levels of it, and so you're going to gatekeep people who are very passionate and willing to suffer. I know this is another thing I've learned from Dan's workshop. Pasios is Greek for suffering. In the early years, you have the luxury of being able to do that when you don't have as many responsibilities, and then you can get established and you've built up enough experience in whatever narrow field of expertise that you have, and you can make a name for yourself there. And provided that you're actually improving your education and you're consistently learning and racking up new experiences, that's really, I think, where the majority of the great coaches come from. It's like anybody can sit through a weekend certification, but can you apply the information selectively as necessary and bring in outside information to harmonize what you've learned. If you can't, then it doesn't matter how many certifications you have because they're not worth the paper they're printed on.
Yeah, and not only that, but because the barriers to entry are relatively lower there, it provides a stepping stone for people to go beyond coaching or personal training. I mean, so many start out in personal training because that was the opportunity that they had. They get some money, they start making a living, and then they go on to be physical therapists or something else, right? Again, and if you take that away, then that's it. Then that path is sort of blocked off from them. So there's a balance to be struck here that is very hard to find the absolute sweet spot between appropriately high barriers to entry, which you want for things like brain surgeons, obviously.
Life and death stuff.
Yeah, but also making sure that there is ample opportunity for people who just don't have a lot of resources starting out, but are willing to work hard and learn and apply themselves, especially at a young age, to get started with something. And I think like personal training and coaching is obviously one of those areas where you should have those opportunities there, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, and there should be I mean, I don't think a personal trainer at the 24/7 gym needs to have a doctorate. And
of course not. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the most important, I mean, I would prefer we all had counseling degrees versus strength and conditioning degrees, because that's where most of the real, flipping the switch to get someone to start to exercise. Remember, only 1 in 20 people exercise. So, I mean, and then we're talking about elite bodybuilding and elite lifting, and really 95% of the population is being missed. Yeah. And you know why? Because of all the conflicting noise that they get every day.
Yep. All right. Let's. Tom has a follow up. He says he would love it to be roast beef. Alex, you're an Arby's man, aren't you? What's your current
a lot of
order?
People don't like Arby's. I think Arby's is spectacular, and I think if you get a 5 for $5 roast beef every day, maybe. I mean, it would definitely be delicious. May not necessarily be the best thing for your waistline, but yeah, man, roast beef. Can't
curly
really
fries.
Curly fries, a must. Look, Arby's has got perfectly fine regular fries, but the curly fries are a work of art. So again, once in a while. It's probably not Arby's every single day, but roast
balance.
Beef. We got exactly. It's all about
Dan's talked about Taco Bell before. You know, there's sort of a love-hate relationship there, right?
I even have the Taco Bell app now.
I'm going to look into this.
Alex will tell you, when you travel across let's just say the great Midwest, finding food options that, so I use the calorie counter at Taco Bell, and I just figured out how can I get 600-700 calories in this meal or whatever it is. When I travel, it's tough. I mean, Alex, that was day 2 on my trip. By the way, funny, Alex, you say it. I started in this hotel, and I drove to Davenport, Iowa that night. And then the next day, you and I had breakfast together.
All right. Yeah.
So, I wouldn't say all my meals are Taco Bell on the road, but what I do like about is when you're in a worst case scenario, and this is important, gentle listener, not everything's always going to be perfect. So you try to make better choices. Mm-hmm. Forget best, forget perfect, do better. Just do better.
Better is better.
I want to just jump in because I want to give Dan a suggestion if he's going to be going through the Midwest, particularly the Great Plains. Fast. And you want, if you ever want to just splurge and then you regret it afterward, go to Taco John's and get a 6-pack and a pound. It's 6 tacos and a pound of what are called potato olays. They're like tater tots essentially, and that'll fill you up. You'll be going way beyond 600.
This is a health podcast, Alex. Rein it in.
Okay, so I do stop at Taco John's because
nice.
He has the app.
But yeah, I generally when you're on the road, if fajitas are a great go-to dinner on the road. Oh, yeah. Lots of veg, fair amount of
guac,
protein.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's pretty safe. Honestly, this idea we're telling our gentle listener, I don't remember which one now, but the idea of you pull over and you buy a carton of cottage cheese and you eat it. There's your fast food. Coffee, cottage cheese, and fajitas. There's your answer. There.
Yeah, no, that's actually very, very good advice. All right, let's take 1 or 2 more here. Here's a special question for you, Alex. Our buddy Kang says, could you tell us about your experience with loaded crawling and how to include it in your workouts? I'm sure Jay and John could chime in too. He just was at the original strength stuff, but yeah. Alex.
Yeah. Well, what I can tell you is the nice thing about crawling and really anything with original strength is if you like training really, really hard, because some people they just have this. We talked about psychology a second ago, like Chip Morton working on helping people to overcome their injuries, like the athletes and that sort of a thing. There are a lot of people who really like to train hard, but then they just work themselves out and they get too fatigued because they want to do snatches too often. They want to, press their heaviest all the time. What's great about original strength is that you can push it really hard in most cases and wake up the next day fresh as a daisy. You don't get this issue with like the excessive fatigue. And the same is also true with loaded crawling. And so my general recommendation would be probably best for the most part to put that sort of a thing at the end of your training. I did go through a period some years ago where I was working my way toward half body weight, and I had all the time in the world. So I'm not recommending that people do this, but this was when I was living in Jerusalem, the Jerusalem, by the way, not the one in Pennsylvania, because periodically people get them mixed up, I guess.
You take one wrong turn.
Yeah, exactly. I took the left, should have taken the left turn at Albuquerque, and you ended up in the Middle East. Well, there's this valley right outside of Jerusalem called the Valley of Hinnom.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. So this is where in the very, very olden days, pagans would sacrifice their children to, this god or that. So it's got kind of like a bad pedigree, but it's a very pretty valley apart from its nasty history. But I would like backward crawl up this hill, and it would take pretty close to it's not like a really steep one, but it would take pretty close to like 200 steps in order to finish it, if I remember correctly. Then I would go home, and then I would either do kettlebell clean and jerks or military presses. I was quite a bit younger. I think now just the fatigue would be too much, but you could do that at the end of a training session if, let's say, you're working your military presses, and if you don't have a hill, then and you've done a fair bit of crawling as it is, I think backward crawling done at the end of your training is a great way to, let's say, work on something that would be maybe somewhat akin to like a back offset with a lot lighter weight, but it's done in a way that also positively impacts how your body is tied together, your ability to recover from this training. And so you're not just piling a ton of, we'll say, junk volume on top of what started off as very good volume. And I've even done it in my apartments in the past, or I would have only, let's say, maybe enough room for like 5 or 10 paces. And I would put kettlebells on like a really thick pillow, and then I would drag them across the tile floor, get up, turn it around, put my harness, but readjust my harness, crawl again. And you just set a timer for 10 minutes. You're not trying to get across the floor any particular number of times. But it worked great for really building up particularly my thigh strength at a time when I wasn't doing as many squats, but was doing a lot of swings and things and snatches and things, to such a degree that I put on like a noticeable amount of muscle mass, which is theoretically, I don't know if there's a scientific study about it, but you're not supposed to theoretically be able to put that much muscle mass on from something like that. So my experience has been that you can either do it as a separate workout on, let's say, on in-between days, or you toss it in at the end. And I like the timed approach, where anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, just see how much work you can get done. It's ideal if you can do it in a field or some, long area, but if not, you can be creative and you can do it in your own home as well.
Excellent. All right, gentlemen, thank you. Before we go, Dan and Alex would like to hear from both of you. What you're working on this week? What's coming up? What can people look forward to? Alex, you first. Yep.
I'll go first. Okay. So I'm working on a guide. I'm calling it the Field Guide to Tactical Periodization. And I feel that given the topic, I'm not trying to make it scientific. I'm trying to make it very practical. So the idea being, here's how you can continue to make progress in your training, even in the face of chaos and unpredictability, by giving yourself permission. There's that word again. We talked about people looking for permission to make on-the-fly changes in short-term planning, being able to do that in such a way that you are able to respond to the challenges that life throws at you and still move meaningfully forward without having to wait until it's all clear and you got 6 weeks on the calendar where there's nothing, no wrench that could be thrown in your machine. Life marches on. And so this guide is meant to help guide people through how to do that until they get to those clearer waters.
Nice. Excellent. And Dan, how about you?
Well, tomorrow I'll be flying home. I'll be training today so I can get my Wednesday workout in. So, but that's okay. I did, real quick, I know we're out of time, but yesterday, my grandson Leo was here at the hotel with me, and we went to the gym because he wanted to see it. And then he asked if we could work out. So yesterday I did inclines, bench press, curls, and bent over flies with my grandson who's 4. And he had they had these 2-pound weights in there that he did. I got to tell you, folks, a pretty cool experience. That was a pretty cool experience. He stayed the whole time. He's only 4 years old, but he was focused.
It's awesome.
It'll be one of those memories, as I slide from light to darkness that I hope to remember. I go home tomorrow. I'm reading a lot. I've knocked out 4 books this year, so I'm not going to be. I have another called The Tools of Coaching, where I go. Basically, it's going to summarize all my books into one spot. But the biggest thing I got to prep for right now, of course, I've got to winterize, but in 26 days, I'm taking my entire family to Disneyland. So
good luck. I'm sure it'll be fun, but I'm
it's
sure
gonna
it'll
be
be a test. Yeah.
I didn't mention this on the start, but this is something that's really important to me. So I have this thing about Fibonacci numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it to the detriment of my brain. My goal has been to hit 89 kilos, which is 195 pounds. And on Saturday, I weighed 195.
Nice.
Amazing.
So basically, I keep telling people I lose a pound a month, except for whatever reasons, the last 6 months, I've really accelerated. Now, I've also lost, I wouldn't be surprised if I lost some other things, but it's very important for me to be with my grandchildren. It's very important for me to get that body weight down. So 195, I don't know how sustainable it is because, but it doesn't matter because, I use the bumpers idea where I want to be between 2 numbers.
Yep.
I'm not going to lower, it's not going to be 89 kilos and, 195 and 196, but it was a very big deal to me. So obviously what I'm doing works. Folks, watch your calories, get your steps in, lift weights a couple days a week, get your sleep. I know I can't prove any of the things like sleep and stuff like that, but I got to tell you, we all know it works. So.
Yeah. Good stuff. Hey, great conversation today. I think it was important. I hope it was helpful, and we'll catch all of you guys next time. Bye-bye.